If Poverty was a man, then his name would be Okoro because everything about him, from the way he walked, the way he talked, the way he dressed, even the way he reasoned, carried the full signature of lack, and yet he wore it like a chieftaincy title. Okoro was in his late 30s with the kind of lean frame you could mistake for a healthy choice until you noticed that his shoulders were always slightly bent, not from humility, but from years of carrying the weight of life without any cushion of comfort. His skin was dark as it had been baked by the sun, not because he loved outdoor life, but because he had no car and no shade except for the mango tree outside his compound. Yet, his eyes carried that stupid mixture of pride and defiance, as if he wanted the world to know that he was not ashamed of his condition. In fact, he celebrated it. Okoro lived in a one-room apartment whose walls were like the color of an old newspaper in a compound where every other room had similar stories of survival. His zinc roof had so many patches of different colors that if you looked at it from above, it resembled a wannabe coat of many colors stitched together by a blind tailor. Whenever it rained, the roof sang in different pitches, and Okoro liked to boast that no rich man's house could give you such free life music. His bed was pushed against the wall under the window for ventilation because owning a fan was still a dream for next year, and the wooden frame of his bed squeaked as if it was complaining each time he turned in his sleep. His most prized possession was a plastic chair with a cracked backrest, which he often introduced to visitors as imported Italian design, while leaning back on it carefully so that it doesn't break under him. Now, to know Okoro was to know a man who had convinced himself that poverty was the highest form of righteousness. It was not that life had ever been kind to him. No, far from it. Okoro had simply decided that instead of chasing after wealth, which he believed was full of trouble and evil, he would rather marry poverty and remain faithful to her until death do them part. And because he had been raised in a home where his father never trusted anyone with more than 2 shirts, and his mother believed ambition was a dangerous spirit that could make a man forget his family, Okoro's thinking had been carved early. His father used to say, rich people do not sleep well at night, and his mother would nod in agreement while peeling yam on a 3-legged stool, adding, and you know, people with money forget God quickly. Now, those seeds were planted deep in Okoro's young mind until they grew into a tree that shaded his entire adulthood. School never truly opened his eyes either. When he was in secondary school, Okoro was never the boy dreaming about becoming a doctor or an engineer. No, he was the one at the back of the classroom joking that all those big professions are just another way to become a ritualist. When his classmates would discuss future plans, he would smile and say, I will just manage any work that fits me. After all, what else is life? And when his mates went off to the university or apprenticeship, he stayed behind in the village, helping his father on the small farm and running errands for the elders, proudly wearing the label of content man. Now, as an adult, he carried that philosophy everywhere. If you told him that a man had just built a big house, Okoro would instantly nod and say, I hope he has not killed somebody. If you mentioned that someone bought a car, Okoro would shake his head and mutter, that one is in debt, mark my words. Now, if you said a neighbor's business was doing well, he would lean in and whisper, you know, these days, people are using jazz for everything. He never imagined that someone could work hard, save, invest wisely, and become successful without dipping their hands into darkness. In his mind, every rich man had blood on his hands, and every poor man was a saint. However, Okoro's pride in his poverty was not just belief, it was performance. He was so proud to be the self-appointed ambassador of the Ministry of Poverty Affairs that he would sit under the mango tree near Mama Ijeoma's shop in the evening with other men who were his poverty academy students, sipping sachet gin as if it was the finest wine from France. And he would begin his lectures, "My brothers," he would say, and wave his sachet in the air like a prophet. Poverty is peace of mind, though. Nobody will kidnap you, nobody will poison you, and nobody can even kill you because you are broke. But see those rich people, they are always looking behind their shoulders, sleeping with one eye open. And his students, some of whom were tired laborers just looking for evening gist, would nod and sigh in agreement because it felt good to believe that the one thing they all had in common, lack, was actually a crown. Also, there was something strangely infectious about Okoro's confidence. He didn't walk with the shame of a man who was struggling. Rather, he walked like a man who had chosen this life and was very proud of it. People sometimes joked that if poverty had a union, Okoro would be the chairman. Even the children on the streets called him Odogu Abatobi, the great man of the compound square, because he always had a story to tell about how being broke saved someone's life. And so, to Okoro, there was no reason to envy rich people. In fact, he believed that they should envy him. After all, what was money when you could sleep soundly on a tin foam mattress under a singing zinc roof, with the wind blowing through your window and the assurance that no one was plotting to steal from you? Also, if poverty had a pulpit, then Okoro would be the one holding the microphone every single day, sweating like a revival pastor as he preached the gospel of lack to anyone who cared or didn't even care to listen. He was not shy about it. In fact, he believed it was his calling to make sure that people didn't fall into the temptation of riches. His church was not inside a building with glass windows. Oh no. His own cathedral was under the mango tree near Mama Ijeoma's shop. Every evening, Okoro would sit like a council chairman, scanning the streets for any new convert he could recruit into the holy army of poverty. And once a small crowd gathered, even if it was just two mechanics taking a break, a tailor waiting for his last customer, or Mama Ijeoma herself looking for gist, Okoro would start his sermon. "My people, listen to me. The problem with this generation is that everybody wants to blow, nobody wants to manage. But I tell you the truth, it is only people without money that enjoy peace. You think all these men who own mansions in Lekki do sleep well? Lie. Some of them wake up every night because they are being chased by spirits." And as he spoke, he would lean forward and lower his voice to make it sound like a deep revelation from heaven. "I know one man who bought big Jeep last year. Everybody clapped for him. 3 months later, he was carried to the village where they chained him and began to pour salt on his head." Now, was this story verified? Absolutely not. But that didn't stop Okoro from telling it with such conviction that you would think he was the one pouring the salt himself. The drama in his voice even made the skeptical ones lean in closer. And he always had a fresh proverb ready to sprinkle on his speech like pepper on suya. "See, my people, rich men sleep with one eye open, poor men sleep with 2 eyes closed, and even snore loudly on top. Now, which one do you prefer?" Among his mango tree committee of fellow poverty and low-income philosophers was Mazi Ebuka, whose barbing shop had more gossip than customers. Sunday, the Okada man, who had been temporarily resting from work for 2 years now, and Tolu the tailor, whose sewing machine needed as much prayer as his marriage. Together, they formed Okoro's choir, always nodding and saying, true talk, and na so, like Dickens affirming a powerful sermon. But not everybody was a believer. Sometimes a passerby who had just collected a fresh paycheck would try to argue. He would tell Okoro, "But But money is good though, it solves problems, and Okoro would shoot him a look that could peel yam. Solve problem? My friend, money doesn't solve problem, it creates problems. Ask all those rich men who divorce every month. It is poverty that keeps husband and wife together. Where do you want to go when you don't have transport fare to leave? The crowd would burst into laughter, and the poor man trying to argue would slowly back away, defeated by Okoro's unbeatable village logic. Okoro didn't just preach, he also did the job of a police. If he saw you buying new clothes or shoes, he would squint at you suspiciously. Ngozi, what do you now do to be able to afford this fine shoe? Or have you joined Yahoo? If Samson the tailor upgraded his sewing machine, Okoro would wag his finger and say, "You better not use that machine to sew your destiny away." That is how it starts. And heaven help you if you try to flaunt your small progress around him. One time, Sunday, the Okada man managed to buy a fairly used smartphone. The very next evening, Okoro called an emergency mango tree meeting. "My people," he began, while pointing at Sunday like a prosecutor in court. That is how it starts. First, it is phone. Next, it will be Prado Jeep. Then next will be his untimely burial. Sunday, return that phone before I come and do deliverance for you. Even when the street boys were talking about hustling to get ahead, Okoro would interrupt with a story about someone who chased wealth and ended up in disgrace. He would trace every misfortune back to having too much money. If your uncle fell sick, it was because he bought a new car. If your cousin lost her marriage, it was because she opened a boutique. If your friend lost weight, it was because his business was doing too well and enemies were attacking him. It wasn't that Okoro hated success. Nah, he feared it like a man fears a snake in the grass. And because fear loves company, he made it his mission to recruit as many people as possible to stay on his side of life, where poverty was not only accepted, but proudly worn like a national identity card. The irony of it all was that Okoro truly believed he was saving people's lives. In his mind, he was not discouraging progress. Rather, he was protecting souls from the dangers of ambition. And then one day, while Okoro was at the mango tree as usual with his committee, a black SUV, which was clean enough to see your reflection, drove into their dusty streets. You know that kind of car that makes everybody suddenly stop what they are doing. Mama Ijeoma paused. The Okada boys forgot they were fighting over change. Even the goats chewing mango leaves lifted their heads to look. The car parked right opposite Mama Ijeoma's shop, and the tinted window slid down slowly, like a scene from a Nollywood film where the rich man finally reveals his face. And there he was, Chibuzo. Now, this wasn't just any visitor. Chibuzo was Okoro's childhood friend, the boy who used to climb the same mango tree with him and steal the same corn from the farm. Back in the days, they had both sworn that if they never made it in the village, they would proudly die broke together and be buried under the same mango tree. But somehow, Chibuzo had left for the city, and that oath seemed to have expired without notification. Chibuzo stepped out wearing a spotless white senator with expensive wristwatch and shoes. He was no longer the skinny boy who used to run barefoot in the village. Now, he was a full man with broad shoulders and confidence. Okoro was stunned but tried not to show it. He stayed in his chair pretending to be more interested in peeling his granuts. But Chibuzo saw him immediately and broke into a wide smile. "Okoro, my brother," he shouted. The committee under the mango tree all turned to look at Okoro, waiting for his reaction, and Okoro, who didn't want to look impressed, nodded slowly as if he was meeting a man who just returned from serving 6 months in prison. Chibuzo, you still remember us poor people?" Chibuzo laughed, walked over and hugged him tight. They exchanged the usual greetings until Chibuzo dropped the bombshell. "Okoro, I came to see you. I have a small business in the city. It is clean work, nothing shady, but I need someone I can trust and you came to mind. It is just simple office work. You will earn good pay every month and you can even send money back home to help your people. The committee's eyes widened. This was the kind of opportunity people prayed for. But Okoro's face darkened as if someone just told him that his zinc roof had blown away. Chibuzo, I beg, no use me do ritual. I don't want to drive Prado and die at 40. The Mango Tree Committee burst into laughter, but Okoro wasn't smiling. He looked genuinely suspicious, as if Chibuzo's offer was a neatly wrapped coffin. Chibuzo shook his head and chuckled. Okoro, I know you. You are always suspicious, but this is just normal work. You will sit in an office, answer calls, and help with accounts. That is all. But Okoro leaned back and squinted his eyes like a detective. My friend, there is nothing like normal work in this world again. All those your rich friends, I beg oh, I don't even want to know how they made their money. I prefer my peace of mind. Chibuzo tried again, even offering to pay his first year's rent in the city and give him transport allowance, but Okoro's mind was already barricaded. He told Chibuzo that he didn't want to be a stranger in Lagos, where they will use his destiny to fry plantain. The committee, however, looked restless. They couldn't understand why Okoro was rejecting the kind offer that could end his Mango Tree sermons forever. Mazi Ebuka even whispered loudly to Sunday, "This is how opportunity passed somebody by." Chibuzo sighed, shook his head and finally said, "Okoro, just think about it. I'll be around for long. If you change your mind, come and see me." When Chibuzo left, the Mango Tree exploded with anger. They asked Okoro if he had gone mad, but Okoro simply adjusted himself on his plastic chair and said, "My people, I cannot sell my peace of mind for salary. Money is sweet, but so is sleep. When you have money, enemies increase, and I don't want my picture on any obituary poster just because I said yes to one suspicious job." However, the next morning, a different kind of gossip started flying around the Mango Tree. It wasn't the usual arguments about whether sachet water was sweeter than bottled water or who was sleeping with whose neighbor. No, this one was hotter and dripping with envy and speculation. Okoro arrived late, swinging his small nylon bag of groundnuts like a man who had just woken up from the most peaceful poverty nap in the world. He was expecting to resume his position as the Minister of Poverty Affairs, ready to deliver another sermon on why life was safer with empty pockets. But the moment he sat down, the atmosphere shifted. People were smiling in that suspicious way that told you they knew something you didn't. Mazi Ebuka, the unofficial newscaster of the streets, wasted no time. "Okoro, have you heard? Chibuzo built a borehole for the community." Okoro froze. "Borehole?" "Yes, so big one with overhead tank. Clean water is now rushing as if the doors and windows of heaven opened. And it is free. He said anybody can fetch water day or night." Okoro adjusted himself on the chair, trying to look unimpressed. Borehole? That doesn't mean he didn't do jazz now. But before he could enjoy that weak comeback, Sunday the Okada man caught in with another bomb. And it is not only that, so yesterday he gave scholarship to 4 children in the streets. He paid full school fees for the year and even bought them new uniforms. I saw it with my 2 eyes. The Mango Tree Committee started nodding with satisfaction and they all turned to Okoro, waiting for his next line. Okoro swallowed hard. "I beg, all that one is strategy. That is how they do when they want to hide the real source of their money." But his voice lacked the usual fire. The truth was that his mind was already doing push-ups. For years, he had preached that every rich man was evil and every wealthy person was either a thief or a ritualist. But now, here was Chibuzo, not only alive and healthy, but also blessing the community like a modern-day angel. And to make it worse, all his old poverty partners were suddenly drifting towards Chibuzo like moths to light. Even Mazi Ebuka, his right-hand man in the gospel of poverty, was now moving funny. That evening, Okoro saw him walking towards Chibuzo's compound wearing a clean shirt he hadn't seen him wear in years. Later, the news came that Ebuka had gotten a job to be managing the borehole and was now earning a small monthly stipend. Kai, the betrayal stung. So, Ebuka has left me? Okoro muttered to himself. After all the years we spent under this mango tree together, defending poverty with our lives? Unfortunately, by the next week, Sunday the Okada man also abandoned the committee. He was now running errands for Chibuzo and smiling suspiciously like someone whose stomach was finally tasting soft bread after years of chewing dry gari. Even Tolu the tailor got a contract to sew uniforms for the scholarship kids, and he was bragging so loudly that Okoro could hear him from his room. The mango tree was thinning out and the evening jits were becoming shorter. It felt like a church where the congregation had discovered a better preacher down the road. Okoro tried to rally what was left of his poverty disciples. He called for an urgent meeting under the mango tree and spoke with passion. My people, don't allow these so-called riches deceive you. All these things you are seeing is packaging. When they finish using you people, they will throw you away like soaked diaper. But the speech didn't land. Even the two old men who usually nodded true talk after every sentence were quiet, sipping their gin without looking at him. One of them finally muttered, Okoro, I thought you said poverty is peace. I don't understand this one. You are getting angry like someone who was not invited to a wedding. Chai, the words stung more than he expected. That night, as Okoro lay on his bed staring at his patched zinc roof, the sound of the rain was no longer sweet. Instead of hearing a lullaby, he had questions. What if he had taken Chibuzo's offer? What if he could buy small fridge? What if his slippers didn't have to flap like a broken wing every time he walked? However, his poor pride triumphed over any common sense in him and kept him trapped until the day his poverty philosophy finally collided head-on with reality. Okoro had just finished his late breakfast of cold gari with granuts that day, and he was sitting shirtless by the window so that the morning breeze can assist with digestion when a frantic knock pounded on his door. It was Amarachi, his youngest niece, and she was crying. Uncle, Mama has fainted. Okoro jumped up so fast that his plastic chair gave a loud crack as if protesting. His mother, Mama Okoro, was a very strong old woman who rarely complained about anything. If she said her head was hurting, it meant that the average person would already be rolling on the floor in pain. So, if she fainted, that was an emergency that didn't understand poverty philosophy. He ran barefoot to her small mud-walled house down the road, and there she laid on the raffia mats, breathing shallowly. Some neighbors had gathered, and they were fanning her with a piece of cardboard, offering all kinds of advice, from pouring cold water on her head to rubbing her chest with palm oil. Hospital, Okoro said. We need to take her to the hospital now. Everyone nodded, but one question hung in the air. With what money? Okoro didn't even have a savings account. His emergency fund was a crumpled 2,500 naira hidden in an empty powdered milk tin under his bed, which was enough to buy paracetamol and maybe a loaf of bread, but not enough for a real hospital bill. Right there, he suddenly felt like the granite shells he used to throw away had more value than his entire bank balance. Still, he couldn't waste time, so he flagged down a keke, bundled his mother inside, and they rattled down to the only decent clinic in town. The nurse at the front desk spoke with the casual tone of someone asking for biscuits money. Deposit is 50,000 naira before the doctor can attend to her. Okoro's Okoro's heart nearly stopped. 50,000? He repeated, as if saying it twice would make the money smaller. Yes, the nurse said impatiently. Cash or transfer? Okoro's mouth went dry. He didn't even have transfer. His account balance could be described as missing in action. He tried bargaining as if he was at the market. Nurse, please, I can pay 2,500 now. Then I'll balance the rest next year. No, I mean next week. The nurse didn't even blink at him. She just called the next person in line. That was when reality, with its big and solid army boots, stepped on Okoro's chest and matched him hard. All his years of mocking people for chasing money and all his talk about how poverty is peace of mind suddenly felt like cheap sachet gin burning his throat. Peace of mind couldn't pay a hospital bill. In that moment, one name flashed through his head like a messiah: Chibuzo. Okoro hated the idea. Going to Chibuzo for help would be like publicly resigning from his position as Minister of Poverty Affairs. The whole street would know before nightfall, but he looked at his mother, who was pale and barely conscious, and his pride suddenly felt like a useless load he had to drop. And so he swallowed his ego like bitter leaf and marched to Chibuzo's compound. The gates alone looked richer than his entire generation put together. He knocked and a young security man opened. "Good morning, sir. Who you want see?" Okoro hesitated before saying, "Chibuzo." Within minutes, Chibuzo appeared holding a cup of tea. His face lit up. "Okoro, my brother, you finally came to accept the job offer." Okoro's lips twitched. "Not exactly. My mother is very sick. They said 50,000 naira deposits before treatment." Chibuzo didn't say a word. He simply went back inside, came out with a neat brown envelope and pressed it onto Okoro's hands. "Yeah, take it and don't worry about paying me back." Okoro stood there stunned. He had expected Chibuzo to gloat, to tease him, and maybe even to say, "I told you so." But instead, Chibuzo touched him on the shoulder and said, "Okoro, my brother, poverty is not peace of mind. It is just silent suffering. You've been wearing it like a crown, but it's been crushing you. Take care of Mama." Okoro was speechless. He ran back to the clinic, and as soon as he made the deposits, his mother was rushed in and the doctors began treatment. Okoro sat on the bench outside, holding his head in both hands, thinking about how all his preaching under the mango tree couldn't have saved his mother if Chibuzo had not been there. Mama Okoro recovered after a few days in the clinic, thanks to Chibuzo's intervention. But for Okoro, the real sickness began in his chest. Every time he visited his mother, she would grab his hand and say, "God bless Chibuzo, God bless him. That boy saved my life." Okoro would nod and smile, but inside, he felt like a joke. The man he had spent time accusing of jazz and evil money was the same man who had pulled him out of a pit without even asking for a rope in return. And then the blow landed. One afternoon, Chibuzo sent for him. Okoro considered ignoring the invitation. After all, if you visit a rich man too often, people would start assuming that you've joined his mystery club. But something told him that this wasn't the time for stubbornness. When he arrived at Chibuzo's compound, he welcomed him warmly, offered him a cold bottle of malt, and got straight to the point. "Okoro, I know you are proud. I know you don't like the idea of working for me. But let's not pretend. Life is hard. I have a small delivery job. You will work flexible hours and earn good money without stress. Take it." Okoro laughed nervously. "Ah, my brother, you know say I don't like to walk up and down." Chibuzo smiled. "You will not be walking up and down. You will be delivering documents and small goods for me around town with my motorcycle. I will even put fuel there. You just need to make the runs and collect your pay every week." And that was how it started. At first, Okoro told himself it was just temporary something to do until Mama fully recovered. However, he didn't dare tell the Mango Tree Committee about it. No, they would roast him alive. He started avoiding the Mango Tree in the evenings, using long delivery routes to avoid bumping into them, as he didn't want want to answer awkward questions, but secrets have short legs. And so it happened one Thursday afternoon when he was on a delivery run wearing a clean blue shirt Chibuzo had given him with an official looking company ID card that made him look like someone with a steady salary. He was on his motorcycle heading back from town when, of all the misfortunes in the world, he ran into Mazi Ebuka and Sunday the Okada man who were buying roasted plantain by the roadside. They froze. He froze. Mazi Ebuka's face lit up with wicked delight. Okoro, is this not the same man who said office work is ritual initiation? Is this not our honorable Minister of Poverty Affairs? Sunday was already choking on laughter. My chairman, so this is how you have defected to the other side and you didn't even call emergency meeting to hand over your position. Okoro tried to defend himself. No, it's not like that. So it's just I'm just helping Chibuzo with small things, just small, nothing serious. But the damage was done. That evening, the mango tree crowd ushered him with mischievous grins. Even people who had never attended his sermons before came just to witness the humiliation. Ebuka stood up dramatically and cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise and clap for the newest member of the Rich Men's Club in Training, former president of the Poor People's Association. We've lost a general today. The laughter shook the mango tree leaves. Even Mama Ijoma, who was frying akara nearby, was laughing so hard that she nearly fell into the hot oil. Okoro was speechless and tried to join in the laughter, but his smile looked as if it had been borrowed from someone else. He went home early that night, sat on his bed, and thought about how fast things had turned. The mango tree wasn't just a place to sit anymore. It was now a mirror, showing him what pride looked like when it started melting. Still, he consoled himself with the fact that the money from the deliveries was beginning to stack up in his pockets. His slippers no longer flapped like a dying parrot when he walked, and for the first time in his life, he was considering buying a small radio for his room. The same Okoro who swore that poverty was peace of mind was now beginning to taste the sweetness of having small change in your pockets, and whether he liked it or not, the taste was addictive. He was not going to turn back. By the end of the year, anyone who hadn't seen Okoro in a while would have sworn that a spiritual upgrade had taken place in his life. His once faded shirts had been replaced with new ones. Not plenty, but enough to rotate without anyone noticing. His slippers no longer flapped like a wounded bird, as he now wore silent rubber shoes. However, the loudest sign of change was that his once zinc singing room now had curtains. Even Mama Ijoma admitted privately that the man had been washed away from the pot of poverty. The truth was simple. The delivery job had been doing him real good, and shockingly, it not only changed his life but his mouth. Once upon a time, Okoro could sit under the mango tree and lecture for 3 hours straight about how poverty is peace of mind and riches are trouble. But now, when the remaining mango tree committee asked him to continue his usual preaching, he would just smile and wave them off. One particular evening, Sunday the Okada man called across the road, "Chairman, you not go give us evening sermon again?" Okoro pretended to cough. My brother, that chapter of my ministry is now in the archives." The committee burst into laughter. Ebuka asked, "So, you have finally resigned from the Ministry of Poverty Affairs?" Okoro nodded with the seriousness of a government official reading a resignation letter. "Yes, so effective immediately. I am stepping down as a minister. I will now serve only as an advisor on small enjoyments." 1 week later, he made the biggest change of all by moving out of his old room to a clean, painted one-room apartment with a good door, a ceiling fan, and no holes in the roof, which to Okoro felt like moving from the bush to the governor's lodge. On his first night there, lying on his bed under the gentle ceiling fan breeze, Okoro looked up at the neat ceiling and smiled to himself. Poverty is not peace of mind, though. It is slow poison. And so, my besties, that was how the great minister of poverty affairs hung up his crown and traded the mango tree pulpit for a motorcycle key. Thank you for watching the story. Kindly share your thoughts about the story with me in the comment section. What lessons did you learn from the story? Share the story out with your loved ones and give the story a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye!